suggested that we support feminist causes. Rather, he returned with divorce papers. I know it sounds crazy, but asking my husband to donate to feminist causes completely changed my life. He has chosen to take me to court and file for divorce in retaliation. Because my husband has done the unimaginable, I have been crying all day. Hi there, I'm Eloise, a feminist who is 25 years old. For privacy concerns, I will not name the company where I work as a clothes designer. My husband's name is Philip. We have been married for around 2 years and Philip is 38 years old. We have been living comfortably and Philip owns his own travel agency. I first met Philip while he was visiting our business. We were tasked with creating a dress for his ex-girlfriend, whom he intended to surprise on her birthday. I knew I was interested in him the moment I began showing him samples and attempting to assist him in selecting a dress for his girlfriend. I realized that was foolish of me. But even though I knew he had a girlfriend, I simply couldn't tolerate it. I made up a number of reasons to spend additional time with him as I was trying to get the dress to his girlfriend's liking. I simply knew that I would literally have no other opportunity to talk to him if the dress was completed quickly, and I didn't want that, actually. My co-workers observed everything too, and some of them even made an effort to discuss it with me, but I wasn't prepared to hear them. I was determined to have Philip, regardless of the consequences to his relationship. I didn't care about the potential repercussions because I was more focused on dating him. I made every effort to postpone the dressmaking process as much as possible, but I was unable to maintain the act indefinitely. I realized that I had to move quickly to keep my opportunity with Philip. When the dress was eventually finished, I'm a person who enjoys achieving her goals, so I didn't make light of the fact that I wanted Philip. When I confided in my closest friend about my situation, she advised me that forcing the girlfriend to quit their relationship was the best course of action. I took advantage of the fact that I was supposed to bring the outfit to Philip's girlfriend because he appeared like a difficult person to work with. I told her that we had a thing going on and that Philip had been flirting with me while I was creating the dress. Given that Philip had been spending more time at our store while we were delaying the dress, I thought that would work and that his girlfriend had a legitimate suspicion that something was amiss. At first, his girlfriend didn't believe me and urged me to go, but after I showed her a picture, she started to have second thoughts. Philip returned to the store a few days later to inquire about my conversation with his girlfriend. I disputed his allegation, claiming that his girlfriend had been impolite to me and had even attempted to fight me. I could tell his girlfriend had broken up with him based on his response. I was pleased, however. He didn't even attempt to acquire my contact information before leaving the store. I didn't bother him for a total of 6 months before I got in touch with him. We tried to gain his attention for about a year before we ultimately began dating. My issue with Philip was that he needed to be told what to do before he could accomplish anything. Even though I'm a feminist and don't need masculine approval, we must go out together as a pair. I had to convince him. I had to explain to him that we should be intentional in all we do, and that we should give each other presents. However, I was pleased when he started acting appropriately over time. We were moving forward, knowing how hard I had worked for the relationship. I was careful not to ruin it. I had the opportunity to meet his family for a family introduction after we had been dating for almost 2 years. That seemed like a positive step, therefore I was thrilled about it. Philip gave me an indication a few weeks later that he wanted to pop the question. I wanted to marry him and needed the ring, so I made sure we didn't fight or argue during that period. He eventually asked me to marry him and I said yes. After 2 months of being engaged, we started discussing the details of our wedding. I was overwhelmed by everything, but I knew that everything would work out if I put things together. On certain days, I was so worn out that I had to just relax and avoid pushing myself too much. I had to start seeking assistance from others. It really helped that our families came to our aid. Philip made sure I didn't have to pay for the wedding out of pocket, which made me quite happy that he was helping so much. The wedding arrived, and then it was over. We were successful in reaching a consensus over our course of action and way of life. Our life formally began when we moved into our house. Then, everything seems to have gone so smoothly, don't you think? From here, things took a turn for the worst. It wasn't easy living with Philip. It was as though I had never met or dated this individual before. I had to get used to a number of things, including his way of life and how he goes about things. He didn't seem to regard me as much as he ought to prior to marriage. I was aware of certain things I didn't like about him, such as the fact that he didn't treat me like a princess. But I believed that tying him up in a marriage would make him change his ways. Positively, Philip made sure to support me, even if at times it seemed like he was the only one doing so. Whenever I offered to help, he would typically decline, claiming that it was his duty as a man. That pleased me since, really, who wouldn't like the liberty of not having to spend a dime? I followed his choices because I like having complete control over how I spend money. However, as time went on, he began to make significant choices without consulting me, which annoyed me. He didn't want me to become involved when it came to purchasing new furniture, a car, or even his personal funds. I had to talk to my friend once more, and I agreed with her when she claimed that was against feminism. As a feminist, I think everyone should have the same freedom to make choices, including in a marriage. That doesn't seem improper to me. After the wedding, I learned about Philip's temperament. Among other things, when I bought stuff for the house without telling him, or when I used his card to make a purchase without his knowledge, he would easily become upset. I understand that I paid for all of those items with his money, but I felt like I was right. Since I'm his wife, I should have the same say in decisions. He didn't have to appear superior, become upset, or raise his voice about it. We had a lot of arguments about these extremely serious subjects. I eventually became aware that Philip strongly disliked my conception of feminism. I don't think that's the case, despite his constant insistence that I was reading it incorrectly and taking in too much. More problems surfaced in the midst of the bustle. As I tried to adjust to married life and juggle my job and a new family, I simply became weary of cooking nearly every day of my life. I wanted Philip to help out in the kitchen even though he returned from work late. Even though I closed from work before Philip, it was simply too hard to maintain, and I simply became tired of the tension after work. Philip refused to be reasonable, which surprised me. I simply thought no one was listening to me. It seemed as though he valued his work more than I did, despite my complaints. After all, I shouldn't feel any less since he paid for the house. I also put in hours at work, so I was entitled to a little downtime, since it was becoming hard to work and take care of the house at the same time. I even suggested that he hire housekeeping services, but he refused, claiming that we didn't require them. I got promoted at work, but I couldn't handle the workload. I thought Philip would be pleased that I had even received a promotion at work. I assumed that my promotion would enable him to assist me with things and return from work earlier. I still closed from work at the same time even after getting promoted. But I detested cleaning and cooking. I really detested the idea of performing housework in general. Philip seemed purely focused on his own career, in my opinion. He said I should be considerate because he closed really late and only wanted the food to be ready before he arrived. I was so upset about everything at that time in my life and marriage that I made the decision to talk to my friend once more. A part of me thought I had too many problems, and I was genuinely embarrassed that I had to occasionally come talk to her. However, it was clear to me that Philip was not at all understanding my point of view, so I just wanted to talk to someone and get the affirmation I required. I can understand that he worked late and paid all of my payments, including the house and personal obligations. However, I also work for myself, and I believe that I shouldn't be forced to perform kitchen responsibilities all the time as a woman. Being a working woman makes cooking even more difficult. My friend was able to understand my perspective, just as I had anticipated. She told me that she stood solidly behind me and backed all of my opinions after I told her about all that had been happening in the house. She even told me to keep my head up and not give up. I was battling for something really significant, she said. I secretly hoped that my marriage to Philip would never end. I just wanted him to start realizing how feminist I am, and how I find it utterly dishonorable to accept anything less than equality. To entice him to marry me in the first place, I truly endured a lot of suffering. I believed I could change him, even though I knew he wasn't a feminist. I expected him to change with me because, honestly, I wasn't all that feminist before we were married. I wasn't as immersed in it as I was after. I detested cooking and the thought of having to finish everything before my husband returned from his job, for example. who established the guidelines and mandated that it be done that way. Since I am positive that my opinions are valid and that I did nothing wrong, I am certain that at least one person will understand my point of view. My friend even encouraged me and gave me advice on what to do next. Philip, of course, noticed how serious I was when my friend proposed that I take a trip and get away from the house. Normally, I'm not the type to follow others blindly and do exactly what they say. I took it right away. I told him I wanted some alone time to get my thoughts straight. I declined Philip's offer to take time off work to accompany me, even though he said he had nothing against it. I assured him that I was okay on my own, and happily, he didn't ask any more questions. I connected with a group of women I met while on vacation. My friend put me in touch with them, and they were also feminists. They gave me a sense of relatability, which was the ideal affirmation. The fact that other women shared my sentiments makes me very happy, although I wasn't readily persuaded. This group of women was fervently committed to feminism and women's equality. I wanted to be a part of their mission to transform the world. To stay in touch, I obtained their contact details. I always made time to visit their foundation after work because it was close to my home. This meant that I hardly had time to clean the house before Philip returned. I didn't have time to do my usual chores of cooking and cleaning, let alone take our clothes to the dry cleaner. I'll admit that because I was too busy to take care of the house. It looked really bad at one point. I was doing everything I could to balance work and the foundation, thus, it was simply too much to handle. Although I was aware that Philip was observing the shift, he initially ignored me and gave me the benefit of the doubt. Nevertheless, I was certain that he would soon begin to protest and ask questions. I therefore made the decision to talk to a foundation employee. She assured me that I was just doing my hardest to be a good wife and working woman and that I was not doing anything wrong. I believed that another woman was being unreasonable, so I chose to ignore her when she tried to inform me that I was going too far. Philip eventually made the decision to talk to me about my new behavior and how I was hardly at home or doing anything at all. We had a lengthy argument that day, and I could tell Philip was growing frustrated with a lot of things. I couldn't figure out why he was growing tired in the first place. He said he didn't see it, but I felt like I was doing my best as a wife. One major factor was that I wasn't cheating, right? Like other males, he came up with the money argument when he asked me to enumerate the things I contributed to the table. I replied that he should be grateful just for my presence. However, he claimed that despite his busy work schedule, he was taking care of me, supporting me, and preparing for our future together. He also brought up the fact that, despite his fatigue, he occasionally prepared before I returned from the foundation. Philip became so irate that he set me a deadline, saying he would be more than happy to stay at home and take care of the house if I was prepared to pay for it. I declined since my request was for equal rights rather than to be his source of money. I chose to let Philip do his thing and move on with my life, because I didn't like how serious he was becoming. Everything was going smoothly, and I was doing okay at work. I managed to strike a balance. I started making greater investments in myself. I was able to find happiness for myself without considering other people. I focused on myself in my heart. I understood that I had taken a break because I didn't want to get divorced from Philip. He was clearly growing impatient and had little patience with what I was doing. I had to tone down a bit since I didn't want to lose the marriage for which I prayed for years. All I wanted was to live like a princess without having to deal with stress and a lot of housekeeping. I needed Philip to understand my perspective. I believed that by calming things down and acting as though I finally agreed with him for a while, I might make him forget what I had done and put an end to any thoughts of getting a divorce. However, I was completely mistaken. He approached me to talk about something I had never wanted to talk about. He asked to talk to me on a Saturday morning after we finished the meal he had ordered, and I consented. I feel like we should start talking was the first thing he said, and I can still clearly recall it. Looking at children now, I must admit that those words completely traumatized me. Children, I had no desire to have children. I wasn't prepared for children before he suggested it. I had never given having kids any thought. I adore my physique, yet I'm not ready to have children just yet, so you can only imagine how shocked I was when he mentioned it. To be honest, I didn't say no when he told me he wanted children before we were married. I simply didn't say anything since I was determined to marry him no matter what. However, I just came to the realization that having children was not in my future after 5 years of dating. I told him no for a number of reasons, including insecurities. Since he asked me before popping the question and I didn't say no, Philip felt as though I had gaslighted him. He assured me that he would not allow me to use him in that way, that he would not set aside his aspiration and lead an unhappy existence, simply because I woke up one day and chose to understand feminism. In my own way, he left the house after telling me that. Since I was genuinely upset about how things had gone, I made the decision to keep quiet and avoid doing or saying anything that would agitate him for a while. However, I broke my vow not to frighten him after a bizarre incident occurred at the foundation one day. A handful of the husbands of other foundation members made donations to the organization. Some of them made their own donations, since their spouses disagreed with the foundation's values and the goals of their movement. I had been a member long enough for the other women to start asking me to contribute to the feminist cause as well. I made the decision to donate because I didn't want to be left out, but I wanted Philip to do it himself rather than using my own funds. I therefore made the decision to plan. I wanted to go to a therapist with Philip, work out our differences, and then immediately ask him to give. It was clear that our marriage was failing and that we were on the verge of divorce. After extensive conversation with like-minded ladies at the foundation, they advised me that it would be better for us to see a therapist, so I loved the idea. The therapist was extremely biased, which I found disappointing. In every one of our sessions, she made it sound like I was the one who was to blame and said that if I truly wanted equality, he needed to stop paying for everything and we needed to split the money equally. That infuriated me, as I believed that consulting a therapist would validate me and not paint me in a negative light. As a result of the therapist's judgment, Philip got more emphatic and stated that I was seeking to ruin our marriage because I was being influenced by people. Additionally, he made it apparent that my actions will eventually result in our divorce. It felt like my life was literally falling apart in front of my eyes, and I couldn't believe what was happening. My friend was putting pressure on me and I was feeling ashamed of being the only one. So I had to act quickly and ask him to donate. Before I invited Philly to contribute to the feminist movements, I waited months to make sure we were on good terms. I was not prepared for Philly to become upset and attack me, telling me that I was the worst choice he had ever made in his life. Additionally, he vowed never to donate a single penny of his hard-earned money to the same organization that was pressuring me to end our marriage. He delivered me divorce papers and sent me out of the house 6 weeks later. But I assumed it was just another one of his typical outbursts. Right now, we are essentially on the verge of getting a divorce. I can't believe all of this occurred. To me, it feels like a dream. The man I essentially lied to marry wants to divorce me, even though I felt I was doing inappropriately. Since I'm genuinely going nuts right now, I need help immediately and don't know what to do. Losing this marriage would destroy me, thus, I do not want it to happen. Update. Hi? I can't believe it's been more than a year already. I never intended for there to be a second update, or even for it to take so long. Life slammed me so hard that I had to modify my mind about updating. In a sense, I suppose this is how I cure myself. Oh, and because you guys have so severely criticized my character, I absolutely must respond to the remarks. It feels like everyone is just labeling me brainwashed and delusional. Despite my prayers and hopes that I would be understood, I am a disgrace to feminism and everything it stands for. Some even said these weren't what I expected, and I've been through a lot. It looks like I had been gaslighting myself, but all I wanted was equality and the freedom to choose when I wanted to. You may wonder what has been going on in my life for so long. Philip wouldn't accept me back, so I ended up getting divorced. I assured him that I would change, but he responded that he was over me and didn't want to be around a self-centered narcissist masquerading as a woman. I still find myself thinking about those remarks, therefore, I find it hard to believe he said them. Due to the negative effects of the divorce, I went from not giving my all at work to missing work, which ultimately led to my termination from the organization. I received an ultimatum, but I was fired because I was still unable to get back on my feet and work efficiently. Since then, I've been searching for work, But I haven't been successful. One error of mine has completely upended my life. Imagine getting divorced and broke. I despise my existence. I regret meeting those individuals. And turning into a feminist. If I weren't affected, I would be living the life I've always wanted.